So we're here today talking with Rick Boynton, who is the creative producer at Chicago Shakespeare Theater. And I'd love to start, Rick, by asking you if you could tell us a little bit about your background and your training and what ultimately led you to Chicago Shakes.
Hey, Elise. Nice to see you today.
Thank you.
Okay, I went to Northwestern, graduated with a theater degree, and was an actor for many years. And then was doing a show, actually, and decided at that ripe age of 27 or whatever it was, thought, oh my God, I don't know if I can be doing this when I'm 40 years old. I'm going to be in the same audition pool. This is going to be not good for me. And so I called a friend who was the casting director of the Goodman Theater here in Chicago. And I had thought, you know what? I've always loved talent. Like, I was the actor, actually, this is hilarious. I was the actor at the audition that was looking at all the other talent going, you know what? Sam should really get this. He's so much better than I am. He should get this. And so I knew that I could go to the other side of the table. And so I wanted to be a casting director. And so I called Tara Alonzo, who was the casting director at the Goodman at the time. And I was like, Tara, I want to be a casting director. And she said, you know, you should go be an agent. Learn talent, learn how that works. And so there was a talent agency in the town in Chicago by the name of Paris Davidson Agency. It was a large agency. It's no longer here. She's retired. But she hired me in the corporate film department. And so I was there, and then eventually I headed the feature film television department there, and then got hired by Jane Alderman, who was a major casting office here in town. And it was during the sort of boom time of Chicago, where we were on contract with ABC, and we were doing all sorts of feature film television, and really in 2 years filled my resume with feature film television stuff. And then got a call from Chicago Shakespeare Theater because they had lost their casting director, and they called and said, you know, would you like to be the casting director? And I was like, Shakespeare, and eventually said yes, and then I did double duty until Chicago Shakes was growing and growing, and doing double duty didn't make sense anymore, and I went on full time, and then became the associate artistic director and casting director until 2000, and then got an offer from the Marriott Theater to be the artistic director at the Marriott Theater. It was like, oh, it's such a great opportunity. I went there and had a great time there, and learned a ton and made lifelong friends, and then came back here in 2005 in my current capacity, which is creative producer. So that's a long story to a very short
But it's really interesting. And Rick, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how, you know, you started out as an actor, then you went into being an agent, and then when you transitioned into being a creative producer and being involved on the creative side as opposed to the casting side, I imagine you were able to use your talents that had been associated with being an agent, but just sort of morph them into a new world. Can you talk about how that translated?
Yeah, I think that honestly, that sort of varied background that I've had has helped me in the room. Has helped me in the room, and by that I mean with writers, with creatives. It's collaboration is all about understanding perspective and how one can affect change in a very respectful and collaborative way. And I think, you know, doing a bunch of those things has helped me along the way. You know, I have to say, maybe it was like 6 years ago or something, I did a show here at Chicago Shakespeare Theater. Gary Griffin asked me to be in A Flea in Every Ear. And so I was doing double duty. I was acting during the day and at night, and doing my job here. And I have to tell you, I was so glad I did it. Not only because I had a great time, but it also refreshed that perspective, right? So as an institution, I see the institution now. I see those that connect to the institution through this lens. But it's, I think, so helpful to see it from another perspective, and I think it makes you only better at your job.
Oh, fantastic. So I can imagine that people who aren't familiar with Chicago Shakespeare would wonder, why are we interviewing someone from Chicago Shakespeare Theater in a program that's about developing new musicals? So Rick, maybe you can enlighten us about how you personally got interested in new musicals and exactly what it is that Chicago Shakespeare does in the development of new musicals.
Yeah, I've always loved musicals. That was my portal into theater, my love of the form. And as an actor, I performed in musicals, and I've always just had a passion for it. When I came to Chicago Shakespeare Theater and then went to Marriott, Marriott is a musical theater house, and my involvement grew with NAMPT, and became very involved with that organization and with new work and collaborating with writers, how that works, and really brought all of that to Chicago Shakespeare Theater. We as a Shakespeare theater, our namesake playwright hasn't been around for a really long time. So collaborating with him is not something that you get to do. And so it was important to us and to Chris and to Barbara here at Chicago Shakes that we work with living playwrights, and that we have that kind of collaboration with artists. Not only would it extend sort of the span of offerings that we're doing, but it would also inform our Shakespeare. So since I had this passion for musicals, it started there. And it's funny because I say that I was involved with the National Alliance for Musical Theater, and when I was at Marriott, it made perfect sense to everyone in that organization. And I'll never forget, the double takes and looks that I got when I went to NAMPT representing Chicago Shakespeare Theater. And literally people would come up to me and be like, "Why are you here? Are you, what?" And so it's been great. And I have to say that, our new works, we try not, it's not really a program. We have been involved with new work to produce it. Over the past, how many years now? Over the past 12 years, we've done, I want to say, 19 new works, something like that. There have been, I think, one that we commissioned that hasn't gone to production. So instead of like a new works program, it's really a producing arm of our organization where we commit to writers and we commit to the idea, and I work very closely with them to develop their idea and develop the writing, and with the mind and the goal of producing it. And that's really important to me. I see, and I know you probably see this so much, Elise, where, writers need to get produced, and
Absolutely.
they land in this minefield of readings and workshops, and it's like, no, you know what? This idea is a good idea. We're not here yet. We're actually a long ways away, but I've committed to you, and we're going to figure out how we can make this work. And I'm really lucky to work at Chicago Shakespeare Theater because we will find a portal for it. That's been one of the things that I'm most proud of, is that from Murder for Two to the Book of Joseph to Sense and Sensibility to the Q Brothers to whatever, we found an audience. We found a platform for it. Whether it was, we could take this show and actually tour festivals around the world. And so if we need to do that, and it's not something that can sit down here, we'll find a way to do it. And I'm very fortunate to work with, an organization that supports that kind of work.
That's absolutely amazing, Rick. I mean, I know that at NAMPT, it may have been true 12 years ago that people questioned why you were there, but nobody would question it anymore after the string of world premieres that you folks have done. And I think that's extraordinary because there are many, many developmental opportunities and more all the time around the country, especially because of NAMPT fostering those sorts of things. But I think Chicago Shakes is unique unique in its ability to commit to production, and it is the rare company that's able to produce so many world premieres. I think most organizations would consider themselves doing well if they could do even one world premiere every 2 or 3 years. So the fact that you've done so many is an extraordinary gift to the community. Can you talk a little bit about the process from how you find the pieces that you're interested in, and what the various different pathways are? You could use a couple of different case studies to let us know, how do you get from that first, gee, I think that's an interesting show, to its having its world premiere at Chicago Shakes?
Sure. Many different ways, as you would imagine, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's identifying writers that I've seen their work and heard their work, and they excite me. And I think I want to be in the room collaborating with them. I think we can create something really special. Sometimes it works, where I'll approach them with an idea. Often it's a writer coming and saying, hey, I have this thought. Does that resonate with you? So it's worked many ways. Like Sense and Sensibility is an interesting example. I was actually on the committee at NAMT and read Paul Gordon's Emma, which Evanston Library, and I guess you've been on the committee, so the number of shows that one has to read and listen to, and I was working through the plethora, and I read Paul's script and listened to the score, and I was like, this is so charming and so lovely and beautiful, and I want to meet this guy. This guy's really, really talented, and obviously I knew of him because of his other work. But and so I approached him, and they were doing a production at TheatreWorks. After the NAMT presentation, he got into NAMT, and after that presentation, they did a production at TheatreWorks, and I saw it, and I came back and I said to our artistic director here, I was like, Barbara, we need to do this. This is we need to figure it out. So we actually flew to the Old Globe that was doing the production, and met with Paul afterwards. And Paul was like, oh my God, I'd love for you to do this show. That would be so awesome. We'll definitely do it. So we committed, and we were like, we're going to make this work. Well, the producer that held the rights at the time wouldn't give us the rights, is what happened. So we couldn't end up doing Emma, and we were like, oh, darn. So we literally went back to Paul and said, what else do you want to work on? And because we want to do something new with you. We want to work with you, and the idea of a classic and musicalizing that resonated with us at the time. And he came back and he said, I think it's Sense and Sensibility. And I was like, okay, let's see, lead character that doesn't like to share her feelings, and I don't know how that's going to work. Sounds like a really unbelievable challenge. Let's do it. So we did. We committed to it, and we commissioned him, and we worked on it for a couple of years, and really stayed in the game. And again, committed to. We were like, we're going to produce this, so we're going to get to the other side, and we did. And we had an unbelievable collaboration, and really proud of that production. And then that subsequently went to the Old Globe, and there's still talk of other productions. So all of those ideas and genesis of new work comes in so many different ways, and we're open to any of them.
And are you open to open submissions, or if a writing team is interested in getting their work to you, what are those pathways?
It's agent submission, really, so I won't accept, there's just too many, honestly, now. It's hilarious, because 12 years ago, I couldn't get anybody to send anything here, and sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for. But there's just too many now, honestly, and so we only deal with agent submissions. And then it's about, now what I will respond to, or what I have done in the past is someone can send me something that says, oh, you know what, there's a reading of something coming up, and I do my best to get to those presentations where I can learn about the writers. And then, if that project's really not right for me, but you know what, that artistic voice is something I'm looking for on another project, that's all possible.
Interesting. And if you find a project that maybe the writers are intriguing to you, the project is intriguing, but it doesn't feel quite right for Chicago Shakes, are you able to do any other kind of matchmaking? You used to be an agent, you knew how to line things up. Do you and you have a wide network of NAMT, fellow NAMT members. Is that something you would also do?
Definitely. Definitely. I think that, well, and you know this is what you do for a living, right? Is matchmaking and helping artists, find their strong artistic voices. And I'm a firm believer in that. If something's not right for us, that, then it should go to where it can have a home. And so we do whatever we can. The other thing that's really important to me, and another thing that I'm very proud of, is that there hasn't been a show here that's premiered here that hasn't gone on to a subsequent production.
Oh, now I'm not sure everybody listening understands the import of what you just said, Rick. This is something we talk about at NAMT all the time, the fact that that getting a world premiere is tough, but it's doable. But one of the toughest things is then moving on and getting someone interested in picking it up. So how do you make sure that happens? Is that something you have to set up ahead of time, or do you do legwork after your world premiere?
Both. It again comes in all sorts of different forms, but it means that there's a great deal of legwork that we're doing on our end. So I'm making calls to people that I know. I'm encouraging, I'm putting together a packet, a production packet to send out and do a blast to get as many people. It's tough to get people in. I connect with people on the phone. I do any of that matchmaking that I can do. It's funny you bring up agenting. I try to do my best to think about the essence of a show and how that might resonate with a particular audience, right? So we as theaters all are in the midst of a dialogue with an audience. And so I do my best to try to understand who might be in this kind of dialogue with that kind of audience or that particular audience. And we've had good success with it. Several of the shows are in licensing, and I'm proud of the accomplishments.
Well, you should be. I think one good example, we had a conversation not too long ago with Kellen Blair, because he had come through our program as a lyricist before he went on to BMI. And so, of course, we talked about Murder for Two and how you helped shepherd that. And it has had many, countless productions since then. That must have been a really exciting show to be involved with.
It was. I love those guys. Kellen and Joe are so talented, and we are actually, it's one of a writing team that I'm dying to work with again. But that was a really great process. And then Barbara Whitman came on board, and Jason Raitt, and the producing team that really took it on to a really terrific life. And my hope is that show will be done for years and years and years and years. It should be, because it's a great show and it's so economical.
Yes.
in terms of the bang for the buck. It's so entertaining and so funny and so fun.
And yet there's only
two guys.
Yeah, two guys, and they each play the piano and play multiple roles, and it's smart and funny and just a really good time.
And that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that show in particular was one where we weren't sure we had an audience portal for that one, but
because it's such a small show, you mean?
Well, because it's I had done a lot of work with the Q Brothers, and so we had fostered that sort of edgy hip hop audience, and but we hadn't really dipped our toe into sort of the small musical. It wasn't really edgy per se, but that was we hadn't really done that kind of thing yet, and so it was a real leap of faith in a wonderful way that Chris Henderson and Barbara did, in terms of saying, you know what, let's do it. We'll develop it. We'll do the whole thing. We're going to give it the resource that it needs. We'll commit to a month of and see if we can build some traction with it. And then we'll go from there. And you know what? That ended up having a many-month run here. And Honestly, I believe that show could still be running if we didn't have to put a show in the theater after it, because
That's
it was
fantastic.
such a hit. And so those kinds of successes are wonderful platforms to build upon.
Yeah, that shows that there's room for lots of different types of shows. You mentioned edgy and hip hop, and I know you were very much involved. Am I right with the Othello remix? Can you talk a little bit about that
I
show?
worked very closely with them.
Can you talk a little bit, because that's such a different model, the way that one was put together, and it's such a fun show.
Yeah, it's the Q brothers are so unbelievably talented, right? They're really terrific artists, and they had worked on a project called The Bombity of Errors when G was graduating at NYU. So this was several years ago, and they had, when I first came back to Chicago Shakespeare Theater in 2005, it was shortly after that that they came to Barbara Gaines, our artistic director, with the notion of updating, a hip hop adaptation of Much Ado About Nothing. And so they when they do that, when they start their writing, they really literally do a hip hop translation, if you will, of the whole play. And they brought that into Barbara, and she literally called me and she was like, "Listen, if you want to work on this, have at it, but it's up to you." And so I met with G and J, and I read it, and I was like, you know what, I think this could be really fun. And so we worked very closely on it. I worked very closely on the writing with them, and actually a member of the team that way. And we produced that, and it became Funk It Up About Nothing. And that one had a very successful run here. And then actually that one went to several festivals around the world. That one went to Australia and to Edinburgh and Korea and Poland and a bunch of other places. So that one's had some legs too, which has been nice.
And I got to see the Othello remix, at least a portion of it, at the NAMM Festival, and it seems like to me like it's such a great fit for Chicago Shakes, because it is taking a Shakespearean story but really completely modernizing it. But the way the team puts it together, their command of language, the way they translate it to hip hop, is just absolutely brilliant. It is so much fun.
Yeah, it is, and two things. One was, I didn't know anything about hip hop when I first came to them, and as a Shakespeare theater, we do lots of programming for students, and we give the advice that we give to students when they first see a show is, don't freak out about the language. Just relax, take a deep breath, let it wash over you, and pretty soon you're going to be understanding everything. And I'll never forget, I was in working with them one day, and I was like, oh my God, I need to take the advice that we're giving these kids. And I just need to and from that point on, it was somehow in my bones. I don't know, it just happened. But with Othello the remix, so we did Funk It Up About Nothing, and we were in London at the time at Royal Theatre Stratford East with that production. And Dominic Dromgoole, who was the artistic director of the Globe at the time, came to see the production, and called G&J while they were still in London. I had gone back to Chicago, called them and said, hey, you guys, we have the 2012 the cultural pre-Olympic that we're doing at the Globe in London, and so we have Othello left, and we'd like you guys to represent the United States, North America, in this presentation where we're having all countries from all over the world represent Shakespeare's canon. And so going from this crazy Much Ado About Nothing to the tragedy of Othello was like, oh my God! And we really had a very short development time with this one. And really in about 6 months, within 6 months, and really active time, about 4 months, we premiered on the Globe stage.
Wow.
time that the Globe had ever had amplified sound in the Globe. And I will never forget. I was sitting in in the audience for the first time. Now this is the first time anything that we had done. This was first preview, and thinking, oh my God, is anyone going to show up? A, and then B, how is this going to go? Are they going to get it? You know, especially in this context, in this, you know, in this theater. And I have to tell you, it was the most magical moment. It was so crazy magical. They, you know, there were all these, it was packed. There were all these groundlings, and there were, you know, the place was full, and they completely got it. They completely got the fact that hip hop so connects to Shakespeare's vernacular, and they got all the jokes. They got the virtuosity of the four guys doing all of this.
Yeah, they play all the roles.
It
is a tour de force to see them take on all the roles. It's amazing.
It is cool. It is cool. And you know, I have to say, this was really neat too, was the next day we came and there was a line around the block to get tickets, and we were like, yes, this is awesome. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
That's
that was
fantastic.
a real labor of love, and with a team that I adore.
That's fantastic. Rick, I've been asking everybody a question that's in the fantasy world. I want to ask you, if you were to wake up tomorrow morning and suddenly find you'd been gifted $100 million earmarked for the development of new musicals, how would you want to spend it?
Wow. I would commission a ton of stuff. What would I do? Actually, you know what I would do? It would be not only commissioning things, but actually being the continued voice in how it moves forward, the trajectory of it. So if I could not only be in the capacity and the position that I'm in, but to be an executive producer on it, that would be bonus. So if I would probably take that money and not only commission some things, but see them through to the end.
That's fantastic. Great. And just to wrap up, thank you so much for all of this wisdom. I'd like to ask you, Rick, a two-part question. What do you sort of see as the future of musical theater at this point? And what kind of advice would you give to the writers who are trying to create the musicals of tomorrow?
I think that the form is ever evolving, and it's also cyclical. What I think one of the big cautionary tales for me is that if you feel like you're following a trend, you're on the back of the curve. You know, I saw this several years ago with jukebox musicals. You know, it's like Jersey Boys and Mamma Mia are wonderful and exactly what they're supposed to be. And those ideas to do that were authentic and came from an artistic impulse that was organic. And I think that some people that were inspired by that or felt that somehow that was a magic bullet to a successful show, that authenticity wasn't necessarily there. And I see that as a cautionary tale. It is about how we continue to push the form forward, and how are the ways that we communicate? How are the ways that we use music? How are the ways that we adjust form? You know, that there is a standard form that can be played with, and we've seen that now, you know, many times over the years. And I think that it just, you know, that further grows the art form and also includes a larger number of people, which I love.
And any advice for the writers about how they should become a part of that?
I think it's, you know, learning your craft, certainly, that's crucial. Aligning yourself with people that can help you realize your vision. Being as prolific as you possibly can be. I think that knowing when to let go of a particular project and move on to the next one. I think that sometimes ideas have a shelf life, and there is a process. I've seen it with my own work where I'm like, oh, I don't want to let this one go, but I have to, as an artist, let this one go because I need to. It's not, this one's not going to happen, or this one's, this isn't the one. So I think it's being prolific. I say that to everyone, whether it's a director or a writer, or be prolific, learn your craft, work with good people, and things will percolate.
Great. Thank you so much, Rick. Well, I think you and Chicago's Shakespeare Theater are a great gift to the musical theater world in all that you do and all that you bring to the table. So thank you for all of that. And thank you for chatting with us today. We really appreciate talking to you.
Elise, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. And it's great to see you, and it's great to talk to you. And I will see you soon.
You bet. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.